Hello everyone, in this tutorial we are going to talk about Django Rest framework implementation in our Django project. And basically what's a Django Rest framework, which is known as DRF as well. It's a very powerful and flexible tool for building web APIs, which is the topic of this series. And in order to use Django Rest framework, which is built on top of Django, we need to go through some processes here in order to install it and configure it in our Django project settings. So first thing first, Django Rest framework works with Python version from 3.5 till the 3.9, as you see here in the documentation, and with Django 2.2 till the 3.1. And I'll leave a link in the description for this Django Rest-framework.org, which is the documentation. The documentation is amazing. You will find here everything you need to know or to experiment with Django Rest framework, and the community is great, and you will find all the support that you need. So let's start with the installation. So first thing first, we need to install Django Rest framework using pip. So we'll copy this here and we'll go to our My API project. First thing first, I'm using VS Code. So from terminal here, let me close it so you guys can see how I did it. So if we go here to terminal, start new terminal, and here first thing I'm going to do is activate the virtual environment so I can perform or install packages to our project. So we simply do dot space dot / and the folder name of the virtual environment and / scripts, and then activate. After that, we see this env here between two parentheses. That means the virtual environment is activated. Now I can install the Django Rest framework. And after installing the Django Rest framework, let's go back to the documentation and see the requirements or the configurations that we need to add to our project in order to get a Django Rest framework toolkit to work. So we'll go there. The next step we need to do is add Rest framework to the installed app for the Django project to recognize the Django Rest framework. So let's copy this and go to our settings.py, and inside here the installed app list we just pasted, and then we go back to the documentation. The next step is to add a URL pattern, or we add only the path here, the endpoint for the Django Rest framework, and this endpoint will serve the Django Rest framework applications, the native applications. Obviously we can add more endpoints to our API and use Django Rest framework toolkit to serve it. So let's copy this and add it to our URL pattern inside the urls.py file here. So mainly when you create a Django project, you will see that you have URL patterns with an admin endpoint, which we use to access the admin panel. Now we need to add another endpoint, which is an API auth, and this represents the native REST framework application, and we will navigate to this endpoint and do a GET request and see what we get from it. So let's save this here and go back here, save the changes in the settings.py. The next thing we need to do is add a configuration dictionary for the Django Rest framework inside our Django project. And to do that, let's just go to the documentation. And inside here, as you see, we have a dictionary with some configuration inside. For example, the default permission classes, which is define which permissions classes that Django Rest framework can use. Okay, so we'll copy that. Inside our settings, you can paste it under the middlewares. And let's delete that. And as you see here, what we have inside this configuration dictionary, we have a default permission classes, and one of the permission classes is the Django model permissions, or a non-read only, okay, which uses the native Django permissions to restrict access to the API. So if we go back to the documentation, I think we are done here with the configurations. So let's go back to our project and then run migrations, because we added a new app to our installed app, so we have to run the migrations. In order to do that, we simply type python manage.py migrate, giving me an error saying include is not defined. So if I go back to, let me save this to urls.py, you can see that include is not defined here. So I'll just import it and then try again. And you see all the migration has been applied, and now all the tables have been created in our database. So now I can simply run the server, run server, and then I'll go to this localhost URL here, and as you can see, I have two endpoints here, either the admin, which will take me to the admin panel, or the API auth, which will show me the API endpoint. So if I type API auth, inside API auth, I can see that I have login, logout for now. So this default or native endpoint will allow me to perform login for the user and logout. So I can also type here login, and you'll see it'll show me this form to allow me to log in and log out, but we don't have any users now to test that. So for that, I'm going to create a user using create super user, and then I'm going to try to log in to using this form. So if I go back to our project here, close the running server, and then I'll just type python manage.py create super user, and then it'll ask me for the username, so I'll name it admin, and an email, just name it admin@myapi.com, and then I'll type a password, The type is hidden because it's a password. So it's saying the password doesn't match. So let me try again. Obviously I made a typo somewhere. Okay, now it's saying super user created successfully. So let's run the server again. And then let's go to the browser and refresh here. And let me try to log in. It's saying enter the correct username and password. Okay, so I'm gonna try again. Okay, and here we go. So as you see here, the login was successful, and the API redirected me to accounts profile, which is why it's showing not found, because we don't have any view to handle this endpoint and show any HTML base, but it shows us that the functionality of the Django REST API login is working. Okay, and if I go to the admin here, as you see, I'm already logged in. So if normally if you go to the admin, you won't see or ask you for username and password. You won't go directly to the admin panel, but now I'm already logged in because I used the REST API or API auth endpoint to log in. So in the next tutorials we will be talking more about login and sign up registration using Django REST Auth to handle all the users, authentication, registration, and other users processes. So that's it guys for this tutorial. Hope you learned something new, and if so, please hit the like button, that helps the channel. And if you're looking forward for more content like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. And until the next one.